Freedom is indivisible. It means you must never influence the choices children make. It's all or nothing. If trust in the child is not absolute, the principle of Summerhill, the principle of freedom of choice, loses all value. There was a boy at Summerhill who never went to a single class and who left the school scarcely knowing how to read or write.
I was one of the few pupils at Summerhill that didn't attend lessons. I chose not to attend because I was not interested in it. I was very good at pottery, carpentry, those sort of things. I had a lot of confidence in my own ability to cope with the world through being able to do things with my hands. So when I left Summerhill at the age of 15, I could barely read or write, and I had no real idea what I was going to do or what I wanted to do.
On leaving Summerhill, Freer spent 5 years hitchhiking around the world twice. After a stay in Europe, he sold jeans in Turkey, his blood in Kuwait, worked in a kibbutz in Israel, was a film extra in India, worked in the mines in Australia, happened across the carnival in Rio, gave conferences on Summerhill in California, went to prison in Canada, and finally ended up taking part in humanitarian movements in Pakistan and India. In short, he visited over 90 countries without ever living through a single winter.
Every time I crossed the border, I would have to fill out a rather large form that required my name and my dress and my age and what language I spoke, what religion I was, etc. And I learned to do these forms, write these forms in such a way, in such bad handwriting, that nobody could actually, even if I had spelt it correctly, they wouldn't have been able to read it. And most customs officials, because they were, say, in Arab countries, couldn't read Latin script anyway, it didn't make much difference. But that was my only real drawback. I had, during this period, taught myself how to read and write correctly. I suppose it first came home when I was in Japan, and I got a job being an English conversation teacher to scientists from a soap factory. And it really, I was explaining what my family does, what my father does, and they couldn't understand what a caravan. My father was a caravan manufacturer, so I had to sort of, they asked me to spell it for them. And at that point I really got fed up, and I thought, God, I can't really spell this very well, and I'm not sure how to spell it. So that really made me decide that I would, teach myself how to read and write. I found that quite embarrassing. So after that, it took me about 3 months. I got a dictionary, and I started to read books and just did it myself. And by the time I got back to the UK, I was quite, normal, I suppose.
How do you feel now about Neil letting you go with such minimal qualifications?
Yeah, well, I'm often puzzled about that, both to do with Neil and my father, in fact. I don't think I would be very worried if my own children grew up not reading and writing. So I've often wondered about how they could have done that. And I don't really understand it. But neither Neil or my father seem to have much concern about it. So I think maybe they just felt that I would do it eventually. I think Neil always said that I will learn eventually.
Much more important.
Freer now has a degree in economics and is an industrial consultant giving advice in many countries in the Third World. He is also increasingly involved in the management of community-based projects in Britain.
I think it taught me a lot of confidence. I think Summerhill gave me a lot of strength to trust in my own judgment and trust my own feelings.